The worker clamps down on the queen's antenna, then a second worker bites into her leg. Within seconds, 50 of her own daughters are swarming her body, stinging her with the same venom they use on enemies. She has spent 7 years underground. She has laid over 1 million eggs. She dissolved her own flight muscles to feed her first children. She starved herself until 73% of her body fat was gone. And this is how it ends. To understand why her own colony just killed her, you need to go back to the afternoon she was born, and the 30 seconds she had to survive it. She does not choose when to leave. For weeks, the winged queen has waited in the deepest galleries of her mother's colony, surrounded by 500,000 sisters. Her abdomen swollen with fat reserves she has never used. She is ready. Her body is built for one flight, one afternoon, one chance. But the workers will not let her pass. They block the tunnels. They press their bodies against hers. They hold her underground until the rain falls, until the humidity climbs above 80%, until the soil temperature hits exactly 78 degrees. The colony does not care if she is ready. It cares if the sky is. When the conditions finally align, the workers reverse. They stop blocking and start shoving. Hundreds of thousands of winged bodies are driven to the surface and launched into open air. A single hectare of infested ground can produce 462,000 flying ants in one synchronized event. Most of them are decoys. The colony expects nearly everyone to be eaten, by dragonflies, by birds, by anything with a mouth, relying on sheer volume to ensure that a fraction of a percent slips through. The queen climbs, 60 meters, 100. She is heavy, her abdomen is a fuel tank, not an engine, and every wing beat costs her calories she cannot replace. Somewhere above her, at altitudes reaching 300 meters, clouds of males are circling. They come from different colonies, different mounds, and they have been built for exactly one task. Each male carries a single payload, 7 million sperm cells sealed inside his body, waiting for transfer. The queen intercepts the swarm. She does not choose carefully. There is no courtship. In the turbulent air, a male locks onto her body, and the coupling happens mid-flight. Chaotic, violent, and brief. He transfers his entire supply of sperm into her storage organ. The spermatheca. The transfer is complete. The male separates, goes rigid, and drops out of the sky. He is dead before he hits the ground. His entire life, from egg to larva to pupa to winged adult, was built around this single, fatal delivery. The queen banks away, carrying 7 million cells she will need to ration for the next 7 years. She will never mate again. The wind catches her. Most queens land within 2 kilometers. Some are pushed as far as 16. She descends towards soil she has never touched, into territory she has never mapped, carrying a genetic future locked inside a body that is already running out of time. She lands, and the killing starts immediately. Dragonflies strike from above. Crab spiders wait in the grass. Ground beetles close in from the soil. The rain that triggered her flight has left standing water everywhere, and queens that land in it drown before they can fold their wings. Surface temperatures above 125 degrees will cook her alive in minutes. She has no nest, no workers, no defense. But the worst threat on the ground is not a predator, it is another ant. The soil is carved into invisible territories owned by mature colonies. Native species, foreign fire ants, anything with workers, and a chemical perimeter. If a patrolling forager detects the queen's scent, the response is instant. The workers swarm her. They pin her legs. They sting her with alkaloid venom until she stops moving. Then they pull her apart. Between 99 and 99.9% of all queens that leave the mother nest die within hours of landing. Out of 100,000 queens launched into the sky on a single afternoon, maybe 100 will survive long enough to dig. The survivors dig. The queen finds a crack in soft, rain-soaked soil, and her first act on the ground is self-mutilation. She hooks her middle and hind legs over her wings and snaps them forward, breaking them off at weak points built into the joints for exactly this purpose. She will never fly again. She will never see the sky again. For the rest of her life, 6, maybe 7 years, she will live underground. She burrows into the dirt, carves a small chamber, and then seals the entrance behind her with packed soil. She buries herself alive. This is claustral founding. From this moment forward, the queen will eat nothing. 0 external calories. No foraging, no hunting, no food from any source outside her own body. She weighs roughly 15 to 25 milligrams. That is all the fuel she has to build a civilization. If her reserves run out before her first children can dig their way to the surface and bring back food, she will starve to death in a chamber no larger than a pea, sealed in a tomb she built with her own mandibles. The clock starts now. In the dark, something begins to dissolve. The queen's body releases a cascade of hormones, juvenile hormone from the corpora allata, and the target is her own chest. The massive flight muscles packed into her thorax, the dense tissue that powered her single afternoon in the sky, begin to break down. The cells liquefy. Protein and fat dissolve into a slurry of triglycerides and fatty acids. This process is called histolysis. She is digesting her own back muscles while fully alive. As the tissue dissolves, her esophagus expands to store it. In related species, the esophagus dilates from 10 micrometers to 265, a 26-fold increase, inflating into a massive internal balloon called a thoracic crop. The empty space where her flight muscles used to be fills with liquefied meat. She regurgitates this fluid to feed her first larvae. She packages some of it into trophic eggs, sterile, non-viable eggs that weigh 0.055 milligrams, made strictly as food pellets, and feeds those too. Her real eggs, the ones that will hatch into workers, weigh only 0.033 milligrams each. Over the founding period, the queen loses 73% of her body fat, 67% of her total energy, more than half her lean weight. Simply breathing in the sealed chamber costs her a fixed 90 joules, whether she produces offspring or not. And if the math stops working, if her reserves drop too low before her larvae mature, she eats her own children. She cannibalizes the developing brood, recycling their protein back into her body, sacrificing some to keep the rest alive. She does not produce normal-sized workers. She cannot afford to. Instead, she produces nanitics, dwarf workers, half the size of a mature colony's smallest ant. 20 stunted daughters are worth more than 5 strong ones, because 20 can dig, nurse, and forage simultaneously the moment the chamber opens. She is an accountant of her own flesh, and every milligram is a decision between her life and theirs. She is not always alone in the coffin. In areas dense with fire ants, multiple newly mated queens, complete strangers, sharing zero genetic loyalty, will crowd into the same founding chamber. This is pleiometrosis, cooperative founding. By pooling their dissolved muscle reserves, the co-queens can produce a larger first generation of nanitics at a faster rate, and speed is survival. The first colony to unseal its chamber and begin foraging can raid slower neighbors, stealing their larvae and absorbing their workers. The alliance looks like cooperation. It is not. Behind the shared pile of eggs, every queen is running the same calculation. When a solo queen founds alone, about 44% of her brood disappears to cannibalism or failure. When 10 queens share a chamber, 88% of the brood vanishes. The mothers are eating each other's offspring. Every queen regurgitates dissolved muscle to feed the communal larvae, then quietly devours her neighbor's eggs to recoup the calories. The pact is temporary. Each queen is betting that her egg-laying rate will outpace the others. She cooperates because the workforce will serve whoever survives, and only one will survive. The first nanitics chew through their pupae and emerge into the chamber. They are tiny, frail, and already carrying the chemical programming that will decide who lives and who dies. The workers do not take orders from any queen. They take readings. Using their antennae, they assess each queen's pheromonal output, the chemical signature linked directly to her egg-laying rate. The queen who laid the most surviving eggs during the starvation phase produces the strongest signal. She is spared. Every other queen is identified as redundant. The nanitics, daughters sometimes of the very queens they are evaluating, swarm the losers. They bite their legs. They sever their antennae. They sting them with venom until the bodies stop twitching. A queen can dissolve her own muscles, starve herself to the edge of death, and sacrifice her body weight to feed a larva, only for that larva to hatch, assess her chemistry, and tear her apart because a rival smelled slightly more fertile. The winning queen watches, and then she eats the dead. The surviving queen cannibalizes the corpses of her executed co-founders. The nutrient boost is so significant that her next generation of workers are physically heavier and stronger than those produced by queens who did not consume their rivals. The colony's foundation is not just built on starvation. It is built on betrayal, execution, and recycled flesh. If the queen survives the founding phase, the flight, the slaughter, the starvation, the cannibalism, and the culling, she enters the longest chapter of her life, and in some ways, the worst. Her ovaries swell until they account for 50 to 70% of her entire body weight. She becomes so heavy, so distended, that she can barely move. She is dependent on workers to groom her, to carry her if the tunnels flood, and to feed her. She cannot digest solid food. Workers bring captured prey to fourth instar larvae, which digest the protein and regurgitate liquid amino acids. Workers then carry the liquid to the queen and feed it mouth to mouth. Her food is pre-chewed by babies. Fueled by this chain, she lays between 800 and 1600 eggs per day. At 0.033 milligrams per egg, She produces roughly twice her own body weight in offspring every 24 hours. She does this every day, for 7 years, and every single fertilized egg requires a withdrawal from the 7 million sperm cells she collected during one chaotic mid-air coupling years ago. She dispenses an average of 2.6 to 3.2 sperm per egg, 10 times more efficient than a honeybee queen, rationing a finite supply across a lifetime of output. But the colony is not grateful. The colony does not recognize service. The workers do not assess loyalty or duration. They assess chemistry. In colonies that accept multiple queens, the workers run a second, invisible test. Every queen's shell is coated in cuticular hydrocarbons, a waxy chemical fingerprint produced by a specific genetic element called the SB supergene. Workers constantly drag their antennae across the queen's body, reading these hydrocarbons and cross-referencing them with pipe-riding alkaloids from her venom glands. If the chemical blend is correct, the queen is allowed to live. If a queen is born without the SB supergene, if her DNA produces the wrong hydrocarbon signature, the workers identify her as a genetic imposter. She can be born in the colony, raised by the colony, and be in perfect health. The moment her body chemistry betrays her, the workers execute her on the spot. She is not a monarch. She is a biological asset under constant chemical surveillance, and her daughters are the guards, even buried under the earth. Undefended by hundreds of thousands of venomous workers, the queen is not safe. Above the mound, 1mm flies called Pseudactian, the decapitating flies, hover over the colony's foraging trails. Each fly targets a single worker, diving in to inject an egg into the ant's thorax. The maggot hatches, crawls into the worker's head, and eats the brain. When it is ready to pupate, it releases an enzyme that dissolves the connective tissue holding the head to the body. The head drops off. The fly pupates inside the severed skull. The flies do not touch the queen. They do not need to. The moment workers detect the hovering shadows, the entire colony panics. Foragers freeze. Trails empty. Food stops flowing underground. The queen, immobilized in her chamber, slowly starves because her supply lines have collapsed. And then there is the passenger. In South America, between 1 and 4% of fire ant colonies harbor Solenopsis daguerre, a parasitic ant that produces no workers of its own. The daguerre queen infiltrates the nest by secreting pheromones that perfectly mimic the host queen. Once inside the royal chamber, she climbs onto the fire ant queen's back and locks herself there, gripping the host's thorax like a yoke. When workers approach to feed the queen, the parasite leans down and intercepts the food. She steals the liquid directly from the queen's jaws. The workers, chemically deceived, begin tending the parasite's eggs instead of their mothers. The fire ant queen, too bloated to fight, too essential to abandon, carries the thing that is starving her, watches her daughters feed the intruder, and can do nothing. Below the parasite, below the flies, a microsporidian pathogen called Solenopsis may already be spreading through the stolen brood the workers brought home from a raid. The pathogen targets her ovaries specifically, rotting her reproductive organs from the inside. Infected colonies see their brood levels crash by 64%. The queen's egg output collapses, and with it, her only political protection. Because in this colony, a queen who stops producing is a queen who starts dying. Around year 6.5, the math catches up. 7 million sperm cells, rationed at 3 per egg, across 1,600 eggs per day, across 2,500 days. The spermatheca empties. There is nothing left to withdraw. Every egg the queen lays from this point forward is unfertilized. Unfertilized eggs do not become workers. They become males, winged drones whose only purpose is to leave the colony, mate once, and die. The queen is still producing. She is still laying. But she is producing the wrong thing, and the colony can smell it. Her pheromones shift. The cuticular hydrocarbons that once broadcast fertility and dominance change composition. The venom alkaloids that signaled reproductive viability fade. The workers do not deliberate. They do not weigh 7 years of service against 1 season of decline. The chemistry changes and the programming activates. Her daughters swarm her. They bite her legs first, then her antennae, then they sting her. The same alkaloid venom they use on enemies, on intruders, on rival queens caught crossing territorial lines, until the body that produced them all goes still. In a single queen colony, this execution is also a death sentence for the executioners. Fire ant workers cannot mate. They cannot lay fertilized eggs. They cannot adopt a replacement queen. The colony of 500,000 ants enters terminal decline, workers aging, foraging less, tunnels collapsing, brood chambers emptying, until the mound goes silent. She was called a queen. She never gave a single order. She was held underground until the weather was right. launched into a sky full of predators, dropped onto hostile ground, sealed in a coffin. She built herself, forced to dissolve her own muscles, starved until she ate her children, betrayed by her co-founders, surveilled by her daughters, parasitized by flies that popped the heads off her workers, ridden by an imposter that stole her food, and executed the moment her body chemistry shifted by a fraction. The colony does not mourn her. The colony does not remember her. The tunnels keep working until they can't. And then the dirt closes over everything she built. She was never in charge. She was the most important thing in the colony and the most disposable. And the system that called her royal was the same system that made sure she would never survive it.